Today I'm going to talk to you about what you do if you're mortgage free or you've got a very low mortgage and you're probably in your sort of late 40s, early 50s, possibly. You could be a lot younger. It doesn't really matter on your age, but it's what to do with it. Now, a lot of people work their whole life at paying off their mortgage and that's it. And that would have been great if we were still in the same situation that you could live off your pension in your later years. But if you haven't got a decent private pension or a decent company pension and you're thinking, I have this asset, my residential property, the mortgage is very low or already paid off, what can I do? And these are a couple of suggestions. Now, if you're happy with the size of your property, what you could look to do is do a remortgage and get some money out of your property, and you can invest that. So you can invest in stocks and shares, or you can invest in another property. Or if you're getting to a point, and a lot of people do get to this point in life where their children have left and they were keeping a certain size house because they were parents, but they no longer need to do that and they want to downsize or move to a bungalow or something along those lines. What you can do is, instead of selling your property and buying another place, what you can actually do is what's called a let to buy. So with a let to buy, you can change where you live into a rental property. And when you change it into a rental property, you can borrow up to 75% of the mortgage, of the value of the property. So for instance, if your property is worth 100,000, you could borrow 75,000. If your property is worth 200,000, you could borrow 150,000. Now with that 150,000, you can actually invest it in the next property. And that will be quite a huge deposit for your next property. And then depending on your affordability, that would then go with that one. So the first property, you would have tenants paying the rent, and that would cover the 100 or the 150, whatever you decided to borrow. So that would cover that. The rental income would have to cover it. What I mean have to is the bank would not lend it to you unless they knew that the mortgage was covered by the rental income. So you don't need to worry about how the deposit is being funded. And then you could look to buying a new property with quite a substantial deposit. 100, 150,000 is a good deposit. And then your income would cover the rest of the mortgage. Now, what quite a lot of people do, they have the first property on interest only, so the payments aren't as high, and the excess money they use to make overpayments on their new property and obviously their salary on their new property. So that by the time they come to retirement, the residential is pretty much paid off, but the buy-to-let, the rental property, is still working in the background, and then that way you have passive income. Now, the costs to be aware of when you're doing this are there is stamp duty from buying an additional property, and there's obviously the legal fees and remortgage fees and that kind of thing. So you have to be aware of the costs involved. Obviously the rental property, you will need to pay tax on it, and it's just something to be aware of. But it's a great way to actually move forward when you've got a property. There's quite a few things you can do when you've got a very low mortgage or no mortgage on your property. So consider it as an asset and let it work for you, as opposed to just letting it sit there. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are really struggling to make ends meet, but they're sitting on a mortgage free or very low mortgage property. So I would seriously consider seeking professional advice on the best ways of actually releasing some of that equity. Equity is the difference between if you had a mortgage balance and the mortgage. Obviously, if you're mortgage free, then it's 100% equity for you. Now, when you're bearing this in mind, always look at the total cost of it all and weigh up the pros and cons. I mean, it's great being a landlord, and having that passive income, but then you're responsible for the people living there. So a lot of people tend to use managing agents in order to run that property that's being rented, and in some circumstances you never even meet the tenants. You don't have to be involved at all. You hire a managing agent, yes, they charge a fee, but then you're paying tax on your rental income anyway. So the managing agent's fees is a tax deduction, which means that when you're looking at your rental income, you take off the costs of the managing agent and then pay tax on the rest, as opposed to paying tax on all of it. You could also consider, if you wanted to keep your property and you were going to raise some money from it to invest in another property, when you're investing in the other property, possibly purchase it as a limited company, and then that way not only would the managing agent fees be tax deductible, but the interest that you pay on the mortgage would also be considered a business expense. So weigh up the pros and cons between being a landlord, or as I said, you can invest in stocks and shares or other types of investment. You can also, if you don't want to go all in by yourself and buy an investment property, you can actually research and get in contact with people who actually take your money and put it in a joint investment, so like a joint venture. And what they do is they take your money and others' money, pool it together and buy investment properties. And sometimes it's investment properties to rent, sometimes it's investment properties to just literally do up, sell on, and then you get your return. So you could get your return, you know, in as little as 6 months sometimes. Also, you should really do thorough research with these companies and find out if it's the best fit for you, and obviously get references and check these people out. I mean, I come in contact with a lot, and there are some good and some bad, so just be aware of what you need to look into. But I think it's a great way to get your money working for you. You could also consider, if you've got a big house and you've no longer got people living there and you want to keep your home, you could rent a room. You could do, and I know someone who's done that, who's done additional borrowing, and they've actually converted their house. So they've actually got, you know, in the loft, they've got a kitchen and not a kitchen, a bathroom and bedroom, like an ensuite, and then that way you don't have to share your bathroom with whoever you're renting to. So that's something else to look into. But there are lots and lots and lots and lots of ways of using your property. And if you don't understand how it all works, or you need some more information, please send me a DM and subscribe, so I can tell you more let you know more videos, and obviously whatever you want me to talk about during money matters and property and mortgages, of course, I'm more than happy to talk about. So by all means, put in the chat what you'd like me to talk about, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much.